Hello, good evening. I am Dr. Rahi Victory, an infertility specialist, double board certified in Canada and in the United States. And tonight I am very, very pleased and honored to have our amazing guest, Chantelle, on with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Chantelle has been someone I've known for quite some time through my practice, and she's here to talk about her own fertility journey and as well the amazing work she did as a surrogate. So for those of you who are interested in surrogacy, this is all about learning about that journey, what it's like, the perspective of a surrogate, and what that whole journey entails. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. This is awesome.
This is awesome. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Great. And I just raced back from the United States at speeds that I won't declare on camera, but thank you for waiting and being so patient. So tell us a little bit about you. Kind of introduce yourself to the world.
Yeah. So my name is Chantelle Henry. I am 38 years old. I'm from Windsor, born and raised in the area and living out in the county now, which I love. I'm a mom of 2 children. Me and my wife we have our children together. We have a 12-year-old daughter, and then we have our son, thanks to VRC. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me. I work in adult education. I'm passionate about surrogacy. I could talk about it all day long. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Tell us a little bit about your fertility journey with your wife and how you got through, having your own child.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have our daughter from a previous relationship. And then when my wife and I got together, we wanted to grow our family. So we started that process. We came to see you, which was nice. And we were able to get some advice and things because obviously the traditional way for us to have children was not available for us. So when my wife wanted to really be the one to carry the child. And so we went through years of infertility with you, but not bad stuff. You found the reason. Honestly, was like not understanding what was going wrong, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with her, things like that. And you were able to discover that there was an autoimmune disease that she had that we couldn't find, other doctors didn't know about, which played a big factor in her being able to carry a child. So we had to put the brakes on that. We did IUIs, IVF for her. And unfortunately, this just wasn't a possibility. But that's okay because we were lucky enough to have a relationship. There was 2 uteruses to choose from.
Right.
So my wife's like, okay, we have an answer. It's now that closed chapter for her having an answer helped.
Sure.
So we decided to go ahead and I would be the next one up. So we did IUI with you. We found a sperm donor and successfully had our son. He's going to be 5 already, which is kind of funny. And yeah, that's kind of what our fertility journey was, a lot of years of heartbreak.
Yeah.
But then getting answers with you being able to do the exploration, which helped us a lot. So we were able to leave this world, I guess, with our own fertility journey on a positive note because we had answers, even though that's not always what you're hoping. It's at least an answer and you can kind of digest that information.
And a lot of it I find is getting people those answers. Sometimes it's not easy. It's definitely not, a simple part of the journey when you have to absorb the fact that there is a finality or an end to it. But getting the answers when you're so desperate to get information and to find out the why, when we can at least tell people why, I think it really often makes the difference between feeling kind of resolution and kind of having a moment where you say, okay, I get it. And now I can acknowledge that and move on. When you don't get answers, it's like really exceptionally frustrating.
100%. Yeah.
So you then decided to take a totally different turn and consider surrogacy.
Yeah. So when our son was 2, my wife and I got together and just had this conversation about, are we growing our family? Nope, we're good. Our house is full.
Yeah.
Okay. What I was trying to get across to her was there was something inside of me that was feeling this way of, I wanted to have another baby, but I didn't want it to be for us per se. And I think that the reason why I felt that way was because I felt like I was my wife's surrogate.
Okay.
In a way, because she could not carry.
Right.
So I could. So when our son was born, to see her face and the gift to know that this was a possibility still, even though it was her, even though I carried, there was nothing like that. Honestly, it was the best feeling. And so that kind of in my back of my mind always stuck around. So when my son was 2, we had that discussion about let's try to help another family. And so she was, on board. We had a long conversations about those because obviously it's not just the surrogate, it's the whole family,
Right.
and it's a whole behind the scenes of bunch of people. So we had inquired with an agency, and we were very quickly sent a bunch of different profiles of different types of families. It didn't have to be same sex, didn't have to be hetero couple, could have been a single mom, single dad, didn't matter.
Right.
For us, it was just really kind of feeling a pull towards a specific type of people. There were things that we really wanted to get out of that journey, which was, we want to have the relationship with those intended parents forever and the children forever.
Right.
Those were important things for us. So when we went through our profile of setting everything up with the agency, we put all of those important details in there so that hopefully we would match with someone that kind of wanted the same things. So we matched with our intended parents, which are 2 men from Ireland. They're wonderful. We matched with them almost like the next day, I'd say. We're on a Zoom call, we're meeting, we're chit-chatting, getting to know each other a little bit better. And then it was pretty much official pretty quickly after that. They had said, yes, please, we would love for you guys to be our surrogate family, I guess you could say. Yeah. And the rest kind of led from there.
Yeah, super nice couple. They're very pleasant. Yeah. And as are you guys. So I kind of knew that would be a match made. So that's great. You mentioned that there were a lot of people. Did you have to talk to your surrounding family and other people? Did you get any raised eyebrows or pushback or anything like that?
So shockingly, I didn't get any pushback. My family was very supportive. They were kind of like, what is that all this about kind of thing? Talk to us, but what does this mean? Are you genetically related to the baby? How does this work? All kinds of questions. And I was just starting to also learn about all of this stuff. I was new to this in the very beginning. We matched in 2021. February.
Right.
So it's been almost 4 years that we've been in each other's lives. And so, yes, we talked to my parents, talked to her parents, to my siblings, our friends and family, who were all like, this is the coolest thing. We don't know anyone who's ever done that before. And now you're in our family. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. They loved the idea. In fact, when they came here for the birth of, both of their children now, they stayed with my parents. They lived in my parents' house.
Telling me that, and I was like, "What?"
They were like, "Come on in. You're not paying to stay somewhere. We all know this is not a cheap process for families, and how can we do our part to make it their job or their lives a little easier?" So both times they've stayed with my parents when they've come down, which is amazing.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah.
Literally the best case scenario for me as a surrogate. We got very lucky with the intended parents that we did end up matching because they're incredible. Their extended family is incredible. We talk on Zoom together.
Oh, nice.
Everything. We're going over to visit them next August.
Oh, amazing.
Our whole family's going over to meet all their family.
And they do have a gorgeous home because I know when I Zoom with them, I'm just spectacular view. And I was like, is that where you live?
Yes. I remember thinking, they send us videos of different things. They have a hobby farm and different things, right? So they send us videos, and I remember thinking, this is what I see in the movies.
I know.
And this is literally your backyard. You get to wake up to this view every single day. Oh my gosh.
It's beautiful. They're kind of on that hillside, like a valley. And
it's beautiful. And then they break down to a little river where they have their boat.
Yeah.
It's the best, right?
Here we are in Windsor.
I know. I said, I've never been to Europe before. So when I go, I don't know if I'm going to want to come back.
Yeah. It's very pretty there for sure.
Yeah.
So what kind of testing did we kind of torture you with to get you ready for all this?
So all kinds of stuff, right? So blood work, ultrasounds, meeting with psychologists, me and my spouse to make sure that everybody knows what everyone's getting themselves into.
Right.
But it was your typical making sure everything's in check with your health, right? Everything was good. I was physically okay. I was mentally okay, emotionally okay, all those things. But lots of blood tests, coming in for ultrasounds every couple of days, and that initial process, getting that medical clearance, I guess you could say.
Right.
But yeah, it's that I've heard this term that stuck with me that I use quite a bit. It's this rush to wait situation where everything's like, hey, we're going to get you in for blood work. You're going to have an ultrasound and rush. And now we wait for your results, wait for things, because everything takes time, right? Because then there's lawyers involved later on the back end, and everything is a process, right? So to give kind of a timeline, it was 2021 we matched. Yeah. We did do 2 IVF transfers the first time, but those embryos were not from this clinic. They were from a previous clinic.
They had them from somewhere else.
We didn't know anything about those embryos. Unfortunately, those transfers didn't work.
Right.
brought us back to square one. Luckily, they were already here moved over to this clinic, and were able to find a new egg donor and create new embryos, and the most incredible embryos, because both transfers first time worked for me with these ones, which was amazing. Yes, was amazing for that. So, there's 2021 we matched, and I had given birth April 2023 for their first child, and then 10 weeks ago I had their daughter. So,
and look at you. You don't look like you were pregnant. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, she was a preemie, so she was just little. Thank you. But it was, it's your typical cycle monitoring, making sure everything looks good. And then once you got that clearance, it was just kind of get the ball rolling. And then, the one thing I would probably say that maybe surrogates don't really think about a lot is the medication side of things. We know we got to take it. That conversation happens because it's IVF, right? We know, but I don't think a lot of surrogates maybe have never had to take fertility medication. So it can hit you all kinds of different ways, right? With hormones and different things going on, and oh my gosh, your body, but it's temporary, and so that's the only thing I would say was probably for me, like, yes, I had my son through IUI, but it was minimal medication. This was a lot more prep.
It's a lot more.
It's a lot more because there's a lot more at stake too, right? Sure. Like it's, IVF, these embryos are already little embryos. So you kind of, that first stage is done. Now we want to make sure that they're going to stay around.
Did you ever have any part of the process where you were like, whoa, what did I get myself into?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. I think I just got really lucky. The agency that we used, they were amazing. They were great support. They're fantastic. Wealth of information, anything I ever needed to know. I had a support person through them that was always there to answer my questions. So that side, I think, made it a little easier for me. I think somebody going into it, not maybe not using an agency for the first time. I mean, that's just my own experience. Everybody can do what they choose to do, of course, but I would have had a lot of questions. Like I would have, if I did have an agency for at least that first time around, I would have probably been lost and maybe wouldn't have been so I wouldn't have gained as much knowledge as I have now. So that way I kind of knew what was going to happen the second time around. I was more prepared. So that was my own personal experience. Some people are very different, but I definitely think that using that agency and the help helped me a lot because it kind of really put things into perspective and know what's going to come next, what's coming next. And then the clinic here obviously is amazing. So and the staff.
I think the biggest question everybody always has is how does it feel at that moment when you deliver the baby that you've been gestating, you've been carrying, you've been feeling the movements and everything. Yeah. And now it's kind of like, here's your baby. Yeah. Right? Like
for sure.
What do you feel at that minute, at that time?
So I had maybe a different experience than most, because I would say, and please no one come at me for this, even with my own children, that maternal instinct for me didn't kick in immediately. I kind of needed a little bit of time to kind of bond with the baby a little bit more, my own children. Right. And then it was like full force. So I think with the slow babes, that wasn't there because it didn't happen right away at birth for me. Right. And also being around the other individuals, especially the healthcare team at the hospitals, like the nurses and the doctor they all know I'm a surrogate. Right. So they made it a really big deal for the couple, which I loved because I didn't want any of that focus to be on me. Right. I didn't want to have to hold that baby. You let that baby be held by their parents first. I will hold that baby later. So I think not doing those steps immediately right after the baby was born probably helped. Made it easier. A lot easier. Yeah. And also going into the process knowing that child is not your child because and genetically it's not, right? And that's another thing people also think that that was a big thing people would say to me, how could you give up your baby? And I said, it's not my baby. It's not even my egg. Right. And they'd say, it's not? So I think there's just a lot of, not ignorance, but there's it's not a big subject a lot of people talk about unless you're in a fertility world. Yeah. So they were like, oh, I didn't know that. And then it's like this light bulb goes on and then it's like they're okay with it, which kind of seems funny. But I'm like, okay, I get it. I get where you're coming from. But it was more processing that. Knowing like this is not genetically mine. If anything, it was like, I wonder what the baby's going to look like. Is the baby going to look like biodad? Is it going to look, I don't know what the egg donor is. That kind of was exciting to know. What's your little tiny human going to look like when they come out? But no, the giving the child to their parents, there is no better feeling. And to be honest with you, now on the selfish side for me, I got to go home 4 hours later and recoup on my own. Wow. I got to sleep on my own terms. I didn't have to go home. I wasn't that the recovery is a lot nicer as a surrogate than it is when it's your own, because you get to go home and go to sleep if you're not sleep deprived and all that other fun stuff. But yeah, I think that definitely having the mindset ahead of time.
Were you part of any like groups or support groups or social media kind of things?
Lots.
During the whole process?
Yeah, still am. Yeah.
And what's that like? Like, what's the vibe out there for surrogates?
I would say 99% of it is wonderful. The good thing is surrogates kind of always got each other's backs, even for kind of the strangest situations of sometimes that things will be posted and you're thinking, well, I don't know if I really agree with that so much, but then you're not going to go and start a war conversation with somebody kind of thing in a chat on social media. But it's interesting to scroll through sometimes and see people's different perspectives of what they think is happening or not happening and things like that. But yeah, it's with any social media, right? There's always going to be something that either it's all wonderful stuff. There's always going to be things that are a little bit more messy, but they tend to kind of die off a little.
We definitely know that the social media groups have a huge impact because, as you know, the genetic testing for embryos when you're using an egg donor, it really is not indicated, right? Because the chances that they have genetically abnormal embryos is really low.
Right.
But I guess within the surrogate community, the talk came up that you really should have it done because then you have a higher chance of success and a lower chance of miscarriage, which is true on the miscarriage end, but it's actually not true on the higher chance of success. And we had to change what we were doing because we couldn't actually attract surrogates unless our embryos were PGT tested. So it's actually phenomenal how much power these social media groups and surrogates in general can actually wield, because it actually redirected what we did. And it wasn't even necessarily medically right or wrong. I mean, I think you can argue it both ways, but like we had to wake up to the reality that I can't just tell people this is good or bad for you. I have to acknowledge this is what these amazing sacrificial women want. And we got to pay attention to that, because if they're not getting what they want, then we're not getting them. And then we've got our patients waiting. So, yeah. The other thing, of course, that's kind of come up for me personally is recently I took a bit of a beating on one of the social media groups for surrogates because the issue of body mass index. So it's crystal clear from a scientific standpoint that there is a strong correlation between high body mass index and low body mass index and negative outcomes, whether it's the chance of getting pregnant or the complications in pregnancy, things like miscarriage, stillbirth, high blood pressure, diabetes, even significant complications preterm labor. And I was actually quite shocked when I saw all this feedback saying that, people felt that I was too strict about the body mass index component, because I actually haven't spoken to surrogates for about 4 years. So I was like, where is this coming from? Because we actually have the lovely, wonderful Dr. May Rand, and she is literally made of lollipops and rainbows.
Yeah, she really is.
And so she does all of our surro intake and consults. And so I was just kind of flabbergasted thinking, why is there so much kind of angst about this issue? Because I'm actually not even talking to the surrogates, but it is an important issue. And so I'm curious to hear what your feelings are on like the relationship between smoking, drinking, body mass index, marijuana use.
All of that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a good point. I did see some of that circling around on social media as well. All I could really do on that in that area was sharing my own experience.
Sure.
Because I've said sometimes, there's discussions of weight or BMI for women is already like not fun. No one wants to talk about any of that stuff, right? It's never fun. Or drinking and all of those things. If those are things that you do, then it's a difficult conversation, of course. But my thought process on everything is if you are a couple or a single person, whatever, not even surrogacy related. Let's just say they're trying to have a baby, okay? And they're not getting it. It's not working. And they've now have to come to you to say, hey, I need some help. What's going on? What can we do? Those conversations have to happen, right? Because especially with a BMI type of situation, you want to make sure you're at your healthiest physically and mentally. Now, weight, it's okay that not everybody is the perfect body type. Everyone comes in different shapes and sizes. Doesn't mean they're not healthy. Things like that. However, as a surrogate, this is no longer just about us. right? It's about bringing life into the world for another person.
Right.
So it's not like if it's my own child and I'm pregnant with my own child, I do what I want, right? Like there's not in a bad way, just that's my pregnancy, my baby. I'm going to be raising this child for the rest of my life, right? There's a little bit, I might have that salami sandwich or, colds or something, right?
Yeah.
But when you're a surrogate and these people are literally putting their eggs in your basket, I guess you could say, we want to do as best as we can to make that successful. So if that means you're not smoking, you're not drinking, you're not marijuana use, your BMI is important because like you said, the studies have shown the facts are the facts. The best case scenario is to have all of those factors in line.
Right.
Is it a nice conversation to happen? No. Does anybody want to be told your BMI is elevated and we want to, we should look at, lowering that? Nobody wants to have that conversation. But if we're at this point and it has to happen, the conversation has to happen. Hopefully people are not looking at it as they're not trying to tell you are one way. They're trying to tell you that we just need to fix something to give the best chances of success, a successful pregnancy, a successful birth, and even after, I don't want, you can have health things happen after the fact, right? So why wouldn't you want to be the best you could be? Because if not, in my opinion, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, of course, in my opinion, if that conversation and you're not willing to put in the work, you're not in it for the right reasons. As a surrogate, everybody else's is that's their own journeys, right? Yeah. That's my opinion. If I'm going to be told these are the list of things that I need to do in order to make these chances the most successful or the best odds, and I say no, maybe I'm not in it for the right reasons, or maybe I'm not meant to be a surrogate. Maybe it's not what I was thinking it was meant to be. Maybe you thought I was going to sign up, I get pregnant, have a baby, and everything's fine. Not, I have to be medically screened and I have to make sure, those types of things that people might not think about. And they're difficult conversations, but you have to have them.
What's the best way for us as physicians to communicate those difficult conversations to people? Like if it is body mass index and it's high, if I'm ever communicating, whether it's an autologous patient or a homosexual patient or intended parents or whatever the case is, a surrogate, my approach to it generally is, here are the things we need to do to optimize the outcomes for this. And if weight is part of it, I'll say, we want to make sure this is as safe for you because there are risks for you as the patient, the one that's carrying, and for the whole process. So these are kind of our targets. What can we do to work with you to kind of achieve that target? But is there a different way to deliver that information? Because I think kind of, especially being male, and I think that also takes a bit of a toll, having me tell any woman or person who's carrying a baby that they need to adjust their body mass index it's an uphill battle for sure.
Right.
And no matter how I try to deliver that information, I think there's this sudden kind of step back where people say, wait a minute, why are you talking to me about it? Is there a way you think that we can communicate that more effectively to people?
That's actually a really good question. So I would say, I think maybe starting off the conversation with, we're going to have a difficult conversation. We're going to have to discuss some pretty sensitive topics. Are you okay with proceeding to discuss those? Because at least you're not just going to sit down and go, so, your BMI is a little too high today. We're going to, okay, so we're going to go over all of these expectations of what we need to have to optimize a successful surrogacy journey. We're going to have to talk about some pretty sensitive topics. Are you okay for us to proceed with that? And if they might say to you, what kind of sensitive topics? You can say, we're going to have to talk about BMI, drug use, drinking, smoking, listing off all of those things. Are you comfortable with having those conversations? And if they say yes, then that kind of helps lead it into that.
Right.
But yeah, maybe just putting it back on them. So I'm putting that, like, either it's a yes or a no, right? Either you're going to want to have that conversation with me or not. If not, no problem. We know we're just going to have to look at, moving in a different direction or whatever it might be. But if they're willing to hear it, say, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we got to get it out there. And then then we're going to come up with a plan. I'm not going to come into it and say, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what we need to make sure we're doing. And how can we do it as a team?
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not just the surrogate. It's also you and the spouse and life factors, everything
we
around.
got a whole bunch of people.
Everybody's involved. There's a lot of, that's also true. A lot of people probably don't know that. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that happen. And I think just bringing it up and saying, we're going to have a conversation, and then they just let them take it from there. Put the ball in their court.
What advice would you give to women or people who are out there who are thinking, I want to consider surrogacy?
Oh my gosh, do it. I could talk about it all day long. Honestly, I'm a retired surrogate now. You know, I have had 4 babies, and I did tell you once I was getting close to 40, I was done. So
yeah. I did try and drag you kicking and screaming one more.
You did. And trust me, you know, I think it's also the bond that we've built with our intended parents. I think I got really lucky.
Yeah.
I know a lot of other surrogates who have wonderful relationships with their intended parents. Some people, they don't keep in touch sometimes they do. It depends on what everybody's kind of looking for. Also, things change in people's lives, and sometimes people grow apart or things like that. But we got very lucky. We're to the point where even the agency and my support people are saying, this is rare. Like, we now have an extended family, in my opinion. We talk every day. We're going over there to visit them next summer. Like, we're so thankful. Like, honestly, we matched with the best people. What I can say is intended parents are, you know, from when I've met people, they're wonderful. All they want is to be able to have a child of their own.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that's not possible for them to do that. So if you could leave, I always said I wanted to try to leave the world a little bit better than when I came into it.
That's
awesome. I can leave a little bit of something positive, right? So our intended parents will say, you literally started and completed our family. Like, they have their 2 children. That's what they wanted. We knew that from the beginning. So people who are considering surrogacy, what I would say is talk about it a lot. Like, do your research, reach out to other surrogates if you can. Join those groups on social media. I know that sometimes they can be a little bit whatever, but they are wonderful. There's lots of resources in there. They are monitored by admin and all that stuff too, for the most part. So making those connections, ask surrogates. I promise if you ever meet a surrogate, they're going to talk about surrogacy.
Right.
Like, it's just, we can't help it. It becomes like an extension of our identity in a way. And so if you are that kind of person that, you know, you can separate the not my baby and this is your baby and all those things, which I think most people could do. Honestly, I think they really could. If they got the right support people around them, they really think that they could do that. So don't count yourself off just thinking that. Do some research. Speak to an agency, speak to other surrogates, talk to other doctors, maybe, you know, who knows where anybody's at in their life, their stages in their life, but being able to give that gift to somebody who could not do it on their own, and people who want to have children, that deserve to have children, should be able to have children. So
how much of an impact do you think the people at the clinic make on the experience? Huge impact. What was it like for you here?
Oh, it was amazing. So I always say you have like a well-oiled machine running in this joint. I swear, like the ladies of this clinic are incredible. Every single person, they all know me by my name.
Right.
Like, there's very much a first name basis when you come in, and vice versa, because I've just taken a love to all of everybody in here. So, and I still keep in touch with some staff, you know, because they're lovely. And yes, this part of my life is over, but I don't ever really want it to be over. So I'll just continue
You're always welcome.
Randomly messaging you, say, hey, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go anywhere. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, the staff, the communication is great. The bedside manner is wonderful, like going through all the, you know, transfer and all that stuff. Luckily that everything's done in-house, which is so nice. Yeah. We've been with you since the old days.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
so
together right now,
So it's lovely, because I would say there's been a lot of progress with your clinic. Wonderful progress in your clinic, and lots of people who are sharing, because I'll talk about VRC all the time, not just surrogacy, but VRC. And people will, I hope that when I'm talking about that they're also, oh, I'm going to see Dr. V2. I hope that their experience, I always say, I hope your experience is the same as mine, because the staff is wonderful. They're fantastic. And you're not too bad.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Amazing, huge opportunity for us to share with everybody out there what it's like to be a surrogate. And so thank you. And if you ever have more time, don't hesitate to.
Oh, yes, I'd love to.
We would love to have you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful.
Have a great day.
You too.
Take care. Bye.